Slepsky!
Hello again, everybody. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. This is the only podcast where I've covered every episode of Sunbow Cartoon, the DIC, even extreme episodes of G.I. Joe. We've covered every issue of the Marvel Real American Hero comic books. We've gone page by page, panel by panel. And this week, we're back with another You on Joe. That's right. This format is all about you, the listener, the G.I. Joe fan. Whatever your favorite thing about G.I. Joe is, I want to get you on the show and I want to talk about it with you. So you drive the content, your specific thing, whatever it is, we are going to discuss it like we do today. If you want to participate and be a guest, please reach out to me on social media. You can reach me at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Joe on Joe Pod. Or you can send me an email to joeonjoepod@gmail.com, and you can let me know what topic you'd like to discuss. We'll have a good chat and get to know you. Thank you for listening, and then we'll get you on the show. It's really easy. We do it online. We do it over the internet, them Zooms, and it's super easy and super fun. So while you're online doing all that and reaching out to me, please give this show a rate and a review on whatever podcast app that you use. That always helps with ratings and rankings and gets the show seen to more people. If you're so inclined, you can also visit our Patreon page at patreon.com/JoeOnJoePod, and you can help keep the show rolling in that way. There's a couple different tiers you can participate in. If you have a big project coming up and you want to talk about it like a sponsor, we also have a sponsor tier, which is what our wonderful sponsors, the Movies in a Meal podcast, participate in. In the beginning of time, the smallest organism gained sentience and thought to itself, I really need a good meal. Then, a bunch of other stuff happened, and finally the Lumiere brothers started showing movies in France. This was all the inspiration that fellow broadcasters Brad, Keith, and Ben needed to combine these two primal needs into the Movies in a Meal podcast. The Movies in a Meal is one of the most casual and relaxing film talk podcasts you could ever listen to. These three friends enjoy a good meal together while talking all about the movies. And not just reviews, they do favorite lists, comparison discussions, genre talks, anything and everything that you can think of. They've even broken their solemn promise inherent in the name and branched out into TV talk. So I love the variety of films they bring to the table. They cover new releases, classics, cult films, often in one episode. It's really a delight to listen to, and it has something for every movie fan out there to enjoy. So if you're looking to grow your podcast library, if you eat meals, and if you've ever seen a movie, then you should give Ben, Keith, and Brad a listen and subscribe to the Movies in a Meal podcast. They've been a great sponsor to this show. I love the Movies in a Meal podcast, and I'd like all of you to love them too. This week, we are chatting with the one and only Cujo. You Joe fans, you guys know Cujo from his frequent contributions to our friends over at the G.I. Joeberg podcast. Big shout out to them. Lots of respect and admiration for the work they do. He's got his own project, The Black Book, which is awesome, like a comic book, The Black Book. And generally, his online awesome presence. Cujo's a real sharp thinker, and we always have a really great conversation. So, by the way, General Awesomeness, he was a planned figure for the 1995 line, ultimately scrapped. Now, I love speaking with Cujo. Conversations, they always range wide. Like they go everywhere every time we chat personally or on the show. And you're going to see that today. Now we are tackling a big topic, the IDW Legacy. And to be honest, and to defend our contribution there, we barely touched the surface, quite frankly. I don't think we had enough time to do it full on justice. So I think we can do an even bigger conversation about this. There are a lot of IDW contributions, good and bad, to discuss. So if you're out there and you want to talk more IDW, reach out and get yourself booked on You on Joe, and we'll dig into it. I know you're going to love today's talk, though, because we absolutely did dig into some really good points. We covered Real American Hero, and we covered the standard G.I. Joe IDW universe, like their pocket universe. Some of the reboots. We covered some of the those peculiar offshoots, which IDW did that really no other publisher had done before. So I think we made some very cogent observations, if I do say so ourselves. Please sit back, relax, strap it down, and enjoy my chat with Cujo, talking about the IDW Legacy. What was it all for?
Yeah. What new characters did they introduce?
Cujo, really, what was it all for? Because we are talking about GI Joe in the era
Hold on,
of.
save this gold. Save this gold.
No, we're recording, Cooge.
Oh, we're live
We're
right
in,
now.
baby. Not live. I mean, we're recording. Yeah, we're recording, baby.
Well, I'm gonna definitely hand it to you to give the following conversation context.
For sure. So, we were just, Cujo and I just kind of want to go over in broad strokes. I think there's a lot of deep detail stuff that you can get into when you're talking about the IDW era of GI Joe. Neither of us have given it like everything a reread. I think we're in that interim time where Skybound's about to start everything back up.
Hmm.
We're in a limbo. We haven't really gotten any other stuff, and so let's look at what IDW did, and what's our emotions on it? What's our thoughts, our feelings? You know what I'm saying? Because I mean, they had it from 2008 through 2000. When did it end? 20.
I mean, they had it
I
for
mean,
a
through last
decade
year to
plus.
2022. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good long time. And
It's it and for you, dear listener, what did you do with this chapter the last 16 years of your life? No, I'm sure.
yeah. How did you spend it? Did you better yourself? Because we sure did. So first, I think let's just get it out of the way that they did bring back. I think the biggest contribution that they did was bring back the Real American Hero.
Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
it wasn't right away. Correct? Am I remembering this correctly?
No,
That
this
wasn't
is
one of their first. That wasn't one of the first ones. And let me Google
no,
this.
they promoted Cobra
No, it took them
right
2
off the
years.
bat.
It took them 2 years to get into it. Yeah. So sorry, just refresh my dates there. It took them 2 years to realize that we all wanted to see a continuation of Larry's Real American Hero.
Mm.
After that, I got nothing but awesome in that regard. Like we're not doing like reviews of things like that, but just they let him go. They let him do his own thing. We got the universe that we all grew up loving to continue, and they kept it going all the way up to the bitter end.
Well, this is an audio podcast, so I can only assume you have rose-colored glasses on.
Okay. Well,
Um,
no. Please, just dissent as you
well,
will, Cujo. That's why we love having you on the show. That's why you're fantastic.
and I echo that. We're both if you're in the Joe community, you're catching us. Honestly, it's an honor to still be chatting with you guys. We're a couple decades deep into the fandom and all that. But no, as far as me and Joe go, of course, we're just coming off of the community event of Cobra Convergence, so we're active and in tune. I would say, Marvel, a Real American Hero. What are the notes you hit? What does it leave you with? The last issue is the team folding up the flag, I think.
Right.
So I think it had a strong resonance to it. And you move to IDW, which, in the words of, I want to say Chris Rael, whom I interviewed once upon a time, and is a great dude. They call him the nicest guy in comics. I think it's true. But he said that the IDW was more about the supernatural elements, the kind of superhero qualities that the characters came through.
Mm-hmm.
They did focus a majority of their energy on a handful of characters. I don't know, is it too deep a cut to ask you, Joe? Like, how did you feel about that treatment?
Well, you seem to have jumped directly over what we were originally talking about, Cujo, which was the Real American Hero Larry Hama one.
True.
Yeah, that's where we were going. So let me pull you back real quick and get some thoughts on how did you feel about the Larry Hama continuation, the actual Real American
Mm-hmm.
Hero series. What were your total thoughts on that? It took them 2 years to restart it, ran all the way to the
True.
end. Where did you land on that?
Well, I think you and I both have reverence towards Mr. Hama. So that being said, I do think editors can make or stunt a writer or a creator. I think they put Hama in Spin Cycle. IDW did a little bit. Instead of red ninjas, it was blue ninjas. Um, revisited a lot of the same characters, except put them in, swapping genders and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't know. I don't know. Did was it a different book under IDW's tutelage oversight to you?
Um, well, different from the final few, having just recently finished covering those 155s, definitely different from the final, we'll say 2 years worth of Marvel stuff, you know. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel like it, as a piece, it more jibed with where Larry was at in the post issue 50 through like issue 80 era. Like something, not that my numbers may not be exact there, but kind of that era, with a lot more ninjas, with the ninja love of the post 100s,
Mm-hmm.
but storytelling of that 60s, like post 50 through 80 era, where there certainly was some decent military stuff, but I don't think there was the variety of character work that I enjoyed in the pre 50 era. You know what I mean? When
Mm-hmm.
the line was still relatively new and they were feeling their oats and they were introducing new stuff like the dread, just all the new stuff you get in the first 3-4 years of GI Joe. Um,
Definitely.
and so and you're right. I do think there was a lot of wheel spinning, a lot of a lot of a lot of the same stories kind of rehashed, but we saw that a little bit in the Marvel version of it. you know
Yeah.
there were definitely stories and themes that we were seeing repeated over and over again. That's actually not new at all. um it's just you refresh it with new characters and with updated results, things like that. um
Now, are you privy to the story arc during IDW, like the whole thing, or are you just broad stroke
Oh, I'm just
events
broad
and stuff?
stroking it. I'm just broad
Mm-hmm.
stroking it. We're talking. We're summarizing what 14 years. Well, I guess 12, 22. Yeah, 12 years worth of stories. So this is really more.
Yeah.
This is really more my general vibe of it. Very happy to see it. I think because it wasn't supported. I think one of the great things about the original Marvel line is that because the toys drove it, you always had fresh characters being introduced, and I think that's what was missing here with the Real American Hero continuation. I think that's probably my best thesis on it. I think the storytelling was same quality. I think Larry's a great storyteller as far as pacing and stuff, but when you have that added, it's kind of like well, you talked about it with editors, how editors can make or break a project. A lot of times with collaboration, what's the thing about Star Wars that everyone says? George Lucas, when he did the prequels, no one told him no, and when he did Star Wars, all people did was tell him no. And so the original, so you get
Mm-hmm.
a better original set, and then the second time there was less friction, so the product was a little worse. I think if
No,
you
that sounds right.
yeah,
Like,
I think if you took that same kind of premise and said in Larry's second run, because there weren't this constant introduction of characters, I don't think it felt as fresh to us. To me, speaking for myself, it didn't feel as fresh because there wasn't that extra outside third party forcing something on Larry, which he would then masterfully weave in, and we'd get more interesting stuff. Um,
too true.
yeah, a lot of the old
Well,
in the old series, a lot of the rehash stories we saw, and not that there was a ton of them, but you see the same vibes, but it was with new characters, so you could kind of go, oh well, that's just a new adventure, similar to this same adventure, but it's new. And in this case, it wasn't with new characters, so it was just a similar adventure.
now you're on point about like the new characters bringing on fresh storylines and stuff. And you did bring up A Galaxy Far, Far Away, which a lot of people have criticized their modern storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
But I think just very recently, if you're caught up with the Ahsoka series and stuff, it's interesting the angle that they're taking on storytelling now in that universe. They kind of take a step back, and I think if GI Joe is going to captivate like it did, uh, the things that I remember when the GI Joe covers jumped off the shelf was dangerous covers. Um,
Sure.
I think one thing IDW did was went more like playing the best hits.
Oh yeah.
Uh, so I think that's broad stroke across, because of course IDW had a lot of different titles, but we went into an age of storytelling that almost felt industrialized. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you do a cool Snake Eyes cover, but the book's going to be about this, you know?
That's a
So
you
like,
you bring up a great point. So let's segue from the real American hero conversation into the more mainstream series, but this
mm,
topic straddles both, which is IDW are absolutely the current, I'll say the word masters, but the current multi-cover variant kings. Like every issue
oh
of GI
man.
Joe, every issue of GI Joe had two, at least two covers. Um, it's a lot. It's a lot to keep track of, and then it makes them all less memorable, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, I'm on the other side of media now. I'm mainstream, and when you look at like sales and ad sales and stuff, it's not it's not conducive to narrative all the time. So I think obviously the GI Joe books got less personal. They got less, they didn't jump off the shelf. And honestly, I do love some of the alternate covers. I'm not going to knock all of them. I don't remember whose artwork it was, but even on Dead Game, which of course you roasted immortally, uh, they had some good alt covers. Like it was a mock of like old Golden Age
Yeah.
Marvel covers and stuff like that.
Well,
I don't know if you recall that. It
I
was
know
like a Hulk
I do,
cover.
I do, and this is, I mean, this is a broader. We actually have talked about this on the show in broader terms regarding the comic market, and I need a caveat. No reflection on the actual, what I think either one of us would deem like artistic merit of any of these covers for the most part. All these
Mm-hmm.
covers look amazing. They absolutely do look amazing. But I think, just like in the you need to know sometimes, I think there needs to be someone controlling it to say, that's a beautiful piece of artwork. Well, they'd commission it, but to say, we need a cover, we only need one cover, or, um, or it needs to be more focused or something, because what you're getting is you're just getting this flood of great imagery, which doesn't connect you to what happened on the interior of the comic book.
Yeah.
Which, in my opinion, is a bigger, broader issue for the industry. So I'm certainly not blaming IDW for that. But I do know that my G.I. Joe, I could look at almost any issue of the G.I. Joe IDW years and have no idea what happened in that series, with the exception of like Cobra, the Chuckles Cobra
Mm-hmm.
one. Um,
Well,
they're
I find
really good
it.
looking art. They're really good looking art pieces, but the cover has to serve two masters to a comic book, and I don't think they did in this regard. Again, totally broad stroking. I'm sure we could find
Well,
stuff that absolutely served.
we come from the era of choose your own adventure covers. What the Hardy Boys.
Yeah.
Every time you saw a book cover, somebody was in danger.
Yeah. Well,
So
that's what you want. You want
I
danger.
agree. I
You
agree.
want peril. You want an exciting reason. I mean, I'm looking at uh just it's on the wiki page. It's GI Joe Zero, so it's like one of their early issues, if not the first issue that IDW put out. And it's a good looking cover, and Duke's in peril and everything, but it's got nothing. It doesn't tell me anything about the inside. I don't know
Yeah.
what's going on in there. But I get it. You can make that argument about a lot of covers, but we do know that old school Real American Hero did not have a lot of representational covers. They didn't have a lot of vanity covers. They had some really memorable ones, but even some of the more memorable ones absolutely tied into what was going on in the series. Snake Eyes and Storm Shadow back to back at that doorway.
Oh yeah.
That happened inside. Roadblock and Duke holding Cobra Commander hostage. That's a great cover. That happened inside.
Oh yeah.
Like we're just in this era again. It's the era. It's not IDW's fault. We're in this era of flooded imagery, making all of these comic books just feel forgettable or next in line. And I think it hurts. I don't know. I think in the big picture, it may spike that issue sale, but I don't think it builds long term attachment to, I don't know, to a series.
They say GI Joe is like the everyman, and that's why it works for some people, some doesn't. But would you, having seen characters rebooted and characters, I don't know, sometimes somebody else is wearing the Snake Eyes outfit and stuff, would you not be more compelled as a modern Joe fan to pick up a book, say like IDW dabbled in like niche series? I think Paul Aller. I've never had the privilege of reading that,
Mm-hmm.
but the artwork is sharp as hell,
I thought it
and
looked,
they
yeah.
were fresh characters. So I mean, like, I think there's something to that.
Well,
Like,
let's segue then off that into um, just the kind of the stories that IDW told, right? So, um, so they did start with their own fresh IDW continuity, back in 2008, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And for the most part, I believe it was pretty much the same universe. It was the same continuity, even though they restarted many, many times. It was always still considered to be the same people. And I've, as far as like publishing plans, that makes sense to me. You're starting at a new company. G.I. Joe hadn't been published in a little bit at that point. I think a couple years at least. Right? I think Image ended in like 2006. Is that right?
you'd know better than I would, comic
Yeah.
book man.
But it was off for a little bit. It definitely
Mm-hmm.
took a break. And so they're going to put their own stamp on it. So that makes sense to me. They did a bunch of origin stuff. They did G.I. Joe Cobra, which is dynamite. We've talked about that at length on this show before about how great that series is.
Mm-hmm.
But Cobra, I think, was the first sign that they were going to do stuff a little bit different and tell some more
True.
offbeat stories. They did the Hearts and Minds miniseries, which I really liked a lot. That was written by Max Brooks. Very
Those
special.
covers were sharp.
Yeah. Howard Chaykin, I think, did most of those. Very special mission-y, feel.
Mm-hmm.
And according to this timeline here, Infestation, where G.I. Joe did that crossover, there was like an IDW universe. Did you ever read this one?
Oh no, actually, that was one of the highlights of their GI Joe run for me.
Yeah. So
that was a hella compelling underwater chapter
yeah, it
for
was it was
Joe.
it was a fun story, but I think that was like the first tickle into the larger universe of IDW, because that
Mm-hmm.
Infestation crossed over with Star Trek and Ghostbusters and Transformers and all that. So that was exciting, but that was kind of like we could do something different.
Well, before we get too far away from it, in the Cobra GI Joe series, they did introduce a new villain. Not introduce, but he got brought to the forefront. Craig, remember
Oh
he
yeah,
took
yeah, yeah.
over,
Mm-hmm.
and that was like you're like, okay, I can get on board with
Didn't
this.
he have a weird helmet?
It was very reminiscent of Extreme, actually, which you and I have discussed
Extreme.
very epically.
Yeah.
But no, I think that was fresh. Uh, the only problem is, yeah, I think that they didn't continue to bring new characters forward, and of course they didn't have the classified line to kind of help that. But yeah, it stayed. Hmm, how can I say this? It's weird that like the GI Joe fan base is still one of like the fan bases that crowdfunds the most, etc. And a lot of other like storylines just kind of got whiplashed and lost a lot of their old fan bases and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's something about GI Joe that the story is relevant, and it does have a heart and a core because it's U.S. military. I mean, of course, it's ninjas and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but it kind of that's the storyline is like how do people feel about military at that time?
Right.
That's something that Marvel visited regularly and deftly. So I think that, I mean, not to stretch this conversation, but maybe just to
No, this is the
if
conversation,
you're
man.
an
This is it.
IDW fan, maybe you're catching this, you're going, well, what about this? What about that? Of course, put it in the comments. We're here for that. But no, I think it's interesting to see. I had the privilege of chatting with Andy Kubert, who is doing the covers for the Skybound
Oh yeah, and they
relaunch.
look great.
I'm curious if we're just going to get more of the same, 10 characters that they focus on, which would make sense considering it's the same writer. But I hope we don't just get a handoff because I know that they're doing like a standalone Duke book. And like honestly, what more can you say about Duke?
Well,
I
Mike,
mean,
what
that's
I'm
facts.
curious about, and I think they haven't really told us yet, because the Energon universe is GI Joe and Transformers and all this stuff. I think they're doing kind of what IDW did. Is it feels like they're doing that, is that the Duke and Cobra are going to lead into its own GI Joe series and not necessarily roll into GI Joe Real American Hero. Is that what you? Because that's the vibe I get here.
Mm.
Is that what you're hearing, or am
Yeah,
I just completely
no,
imagining that?
I think you're on point that it's more of like, well, what were they doing? How can we do that? I don't, yeah, I'll of course have reservations and stuff like that, but I'm hopeful that the new take on the Joe book is relevant. I think that would be a good start.
Oh yeah, I mean I can't wait for it. But I will say, so let's circle back to IDW. I do think that
Sure.
you're talking about ninjas and stuff. I think they did a good job of keeping the focus on the military. And military and that military Cobra GI Joe drama. They definitely lean more Cobra. Their big there was some of their big highlights were the Cobra Civil War. They actually assassinated Cobra Commander. Um,
That was an epic what spread, wasn't it?
yeah, yeah, and
Whew.
you mentioned Craig. That's who took over as Cobra Commander. I completely forgot about that. Uh,
That was as rich as you remember the Cobra Civil War being when you were a kid.
yeah, oh
You're
yeah,
like,
and the
all
Cobra
these people are vying. Oh man, I
totally,
couldn't
and
put it down.
yes, absolutely. The one when we were kids was fabulous. So that was a really big highlight. They did finally give like Snake Eyes his own ongoing series. And then Storm Shadow joined. It is hard. I get it. It's hard to keep a series about a guy that doesn't speak. Um, I get it.
He can think a lot.
Yeah, I'm not gonna hold it against them that they can't keep a Snake Eyes
It's a
series
very
running.
ponderous
It
series.
really is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But it was fun though, and I remembered when Storm Shadow took over. I remember really digging the Storm Shadow stuff. I enjoyed the Snake Eyes stuff too, but I really liked what they did with the Storm Shadow era of that series.
Hmm.
Um, they went into Infestation Part Two, so that kind of tied everything in, and the when were they finally formally put them all together. Here it is in 2016. There was a third series of GI Joe. They did a fourth series of GI Joe, the Fall of GI Joe. So I mean, they rebooted that series a lot. Before we get into the crossovers with Mask and
Hmm.
Rom and stuff, they did reboot the series a lot. That's another thing about the global state of comics that we could be here all day discussing.
Well, hold
I
on.
don't like the reboots. Yes.
Well, I concur. But I think the last question that we must answer is, as a lifelong Joe fan, do you like it when they mix Joes and Transformers? I'm not asking
Oh,
if they will. Obviously, they're going to
um,
keep trying to shove those two things together.
not on a regular basis. No, I don't think either property needs them, but I think in the real world they might need them to survive for now.
Hmm.
I was excited. I mean, I hope that they do something with them on the big screen, just because we've never seen that on the big screen. But in the comic books, I like it when they occasionally cross over, but then I would prefer they go on their merry way, because as soon as and no shade on the Transformers, but you introduce gigantic space talking robots that can transform into vehicles, and you're changing the entire premise of GI Joe. You know,
Ludicrous.
yeah, yeah. I can only put up with believing like that suspension of disbelief, that humans can fight robots like that so much. You know what I mean?
I think, of course, we have the ears of both IDW and Skybound. But honestly, I feel like if you look at Star Wars, whether you like it or not, it's still relevant. It still thrives. Where did they go? They went back to the Clone Wars. They started talking about the Dirty Dozen or the Broken Dozen or whatever. I'm not a good Star Wars fan, but um, no, like that's what I think GI Joe should do. Yes, you can create more mythology if you're at Skybound. Like we've seen what counterculture looks like on Joe. Did it work for you? I'm just asking that the universal you.
You're talking about
But
the Paul Aller series?
no, I'm talking about just like when you look back at a publisher, idea and design works, what they did with GI Joe. Did they see what you saw? Stuff like that.
Yeah.
But honestly, I'm here for smaller stories. Like whether you take, I think in Star Wars they just did a series called like Return of the Jedi from another perspective, or they go through each movie.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody would be here for just stories from different soldiers' perspectives. I
Yeah. I
mean,
mean, you're talking
that
about
can't go on forever,
you're
but
you're you're talking about special missions then, and
yeah,
we've
that sounds
seen
right.
we've seen special missions come and go over the years. Um, I enjoy a good special mission. I enjoy an anthology book. Anthology comic books don't sell. They've always been hard. They've always been a rough go. I think there's a lot of reasons why they don't, but um, the stories tend to be not forgettable per se, but more throwaway. Um,
Hmm.
Even a character like Batman, Legends of the Dark Knight, that can sustain a long, healthy run because it's Batman. But then you look at this, you look at the real memorable series stories that came out of that. And maybe there's 4 or 5 that are like worthy of going, oh, that's canonized.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, yeah, I think GI Joe is the perfect recipe for that. But I don't know that it would be sustainable. I wish it were. I wish it were. When we were at that con last year and they said like GI Joe sold something like 8,000 copies, I think. That's crazy. Then it's really just a like a copyright
Hmm.
placeholder. That was wild. But if that's the case, if that is the case though, then
Well,
then don't you, as the publisher, don't you start taking wild swings? Which in a way IDW did at the end when they rebooted it and did the Paul Aller stuff. Even the Scarlet Strike Force, completely.
oh,
We
you
can.
had to pick at that one, did you?
Well, no, but that
Nah,
was
I'm playing
them.
around.
That was them making a wild swing, right?
Well,
Lots of
let
reasons.
the
Lots
record
of reasons why it didn't work. Real world
let the
reasons.
record reflect. Of course, if you know me, if you know GI Joe, of course I made it personal once upon a time, and I've grown since then. Um, but I definitely think that like GI Joe, the fandom, again, of course we're talking to everybody, but if we're talking to Skybound, you're talking to the smartest group of people in the world,
Oh yeah.
and very supportive. So I think if you take a sincere approach, whether I thought Scarlet Strike Force, I thought the art was very captivating,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a fresh perspective, and I'll take that every day.
Yeah.
So
Well, they did, and let's some of these other, just to tip back and look at some of the other swings that IDW took. They did that Future Noir 2 issue thing.
mhm.
They did Street Fighter crossed over with GI Joe, which I thought was really great. They did. I think this is a big favorite of yours, the Sierra Muerte by Fife.
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
How does he pronounce
that
his?
and
Is it Fife or Fife?
let's go FIFA.
Fife, yeah. I mean that series is wildly indie comic book. It's screaming it.
I feel like it should have been put out in a trade paper with more visibility
Mm-hmm.
because I think everybody would enjoy that. And also, of course, you have to tip your cap to GI Joe versus Transformers.
I was gonna say that too. That was so good
Yeah,
and so just wild and out there. That one I think suffered a little bit from them not preparing us for what it was.
true. A lot of the books, and it's no fault to the creatives because honestly, if
No.
you're a creator, it's hard to promote and vice versa.
Oh yeah.
But
Well, if you're
yeah,
a
a lot of those
hold
books
on,
did not
wait a
get the
minute.
visibility
If
they
you're a
should have.
creator for a company and it's not your personal business, yes, I know the real world is all the creators have to do their best to promote, but that promotion should be on the company. That's literally what your publisher is there for. If your publisher isn't
Well,
getting behind your book and doing your or at least spearheading the promotion, then what is the publisher?
sometimes
Then
it,
what is the publisher doing?
in some cases, the publisher or the promotions roasted the fan base, so that probably wouldn't have helped too much. But no, I think I'm with you. Let me ask you this in closing, since
Yeah, you
this
got
has
it.
been such a riveting chat. What's one character, and of course it can be old style or toilet teal, but what's one character that you hope Skybound finds and does something with, much like we saw Chuckles or something?
Oh, sure. Well, G.I. Joe, I would love for them to do more with, you know what? I'll throw this out there, Blowtorch.
All right.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
a favorite figure of mine, and really has never had any real love on the printed page.
No, that's a sharp pick because I mean, he's got the feature where he can have the mask on or off, so you got like a couple layers of artwork there.
Yeah.
I like
Plus,
that.
what's more tragic than someone probably dying in a fire that he feels guilt about?
True, and
And
people do draw cool flames.
what about you, Cooch?
Mm, I think um, I always think Shockwave, even though his
Mm.
name is probably lapsed, trademark or whatever, but
They just
I think
announced
he's an
an
interesting
action figure
character.
for him, so they have him an action figure.
He holds an interesting job. He's got, an interesting file card. I think if I would see one, I don't know who my baddie would be. I guess we'll save that for our next chat.
No, no, let's
But
figure a Betty. Let me think. I'll take my turn
all
next.
right, you first. You first.
I love the oddballs. I do. So, I'm here for exploring the Raptors of the world,
Oh,
the Croc Masters of the world. Um,
you know what? I
if
like it.
Yeah, like so, I guess from that crew. Um, you know what? I'm gonna say Headmaster.
Oh wow,
I'm
man,
gonna say
those
Headmaster.
pinstripes.
Yeah, yeah. You update the look, but drugs haven't gone anywhere.
No, that's true.
Drugs
That's
have
true.
not gone anywhere. So what would
What
a
time is it?
yeah?
Um,
Oh yeah, you got to roll. But what would
no,
a
I'm playing around.
2023 headmaster? Oh right. What would a 2023 headmaster look like? Yeah.
I like that. No, honestly, when you mentioned a Raptor, I mean, like, hey, Marvel Spider-Man made Vulture pretty damn dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be a modern take on Raptor.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that'd be
Yeah.
cool. I think that'd be
Be a
good.
hit with the
Yeah.
accounting crowd.
That's the thing. The one thing that comic books will afford you is the ability to dig into and explore the B level characters. When you're doing the action figures, we've seen it every line. They always have to start with those first, 10 figures because they need to make the money to sell the line to get people hooked
My God.
you know what I mean? To then dig into
Yeah.
the lesser tiers. On comics, man, you can do a Chuckle story right out of the gate, which is what IDW did. You can do that.
Word.
Yeah.
Let's hope that some bold ears hear that.
Totally. Oh, and for the record, we talked about it a couple of times, but I don't think I've ever given an opinion. I really enjoyed the Paul Aller stuff. I did.
Absolutely.
I thought the story was really dope. I thought it was a great kind of modern refresh rebranding. I did not like at all whatsoever the fact that they weren't in recognizable costumes. I think that was a big mistake for that series, especially because the artwork itself, while really gorgeous actually, but I forget who the artist was. It was more simplified and it screamed to have recognizable people. I couldn't tell who was who from panel to panel. I think that was
No,
the biggest failing of that series.
no, that's heard. I mean, like, I think that definitely you have to have layers of design on GI Joe for sure.
Yeah, yeah. Just because they're all normal humans, they're just
Ooh,
normal
let me
people. So you got to dress them up in the costumes. But if Paul Aller's listening, I thought it was I really enjoyed the series. I just felt that they They went a little too far in making it like urban warfare.
Mm-hmm. No, no. Honestly, like, I could see a modern Joe book that has podcasters on the Joe team that are like,
Oh
wait,
yeah.
let's just do some podcasting. Wait a second, what's going on here? No, it's totally right. It's totally right.
Well, really, it would be a Cobra scheme, though. Cobra would have a podcaster, and they would accidentally tell all their plans on it. That's how Cobra Commander always got caught. He would accidentally
Nice.
broadcast his plans, and G.I. Joe would be like, well, I guess we got to get to the Capitol because they're attacking.
He's like, guys, is this mic on?
Yeah.
Oh,
You told me this was recorded. We're live.
but honestly, Joe, I do have to wrap up, but I always want to echo that, dude, thank you for being not only an awesome Joe creative and independent, but also somebody who's been a cool friend over the years and given me lots of good advice. And we've just had real chats, and
We have.
I'm glad we're able to catch up.
Well, that means a lot, Cujo. I appreciate you so much. It is great to speak with you again, and thanks again for being on the show. And
Oh, we're not done, my man.
No, we're not
never
done. And you do a lot of work on your project called the Black Book. You guys have known Cujo. He's been around the Joe community for a long time. Check out his Black Book stuff. Cujo, where do we find you on social again? It's Cujo. What's your handle?
Well, you know that one thing they call X these days.
Yeah.
I'm still there.
Yeah.
I'll be there till the X falls off. But no, just YouTube. But of course, when the Black Book does hit V2, everybody will know. It'll
Yeah.
be that big.
Awesome.
But
I love it.
let me echo that sentiment to the Joe community. Thank you guys for being the coolest group of dudes. And yeah. Catch me on Joe Berg. Catch me on YouTube's. And thank you, brother.
You're dynamite, my friend. And now you Joe, and Joeing's half the battle.